Hi. Hi, everybody. We're here today with Jeanine Silversmith of Rhode Island Environmental Education Association and the RI Families in Nature. And she's going to talk to us today about using our individual actions to make global change. Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much.
If you could do that, that'd be great.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm Jeanine, and I actually wanted to start with, I know your names, but if we could start with going around and just say your name and then your favorite thing to do outside, or one of your favorite things to do outside. So.
Oh my gosh. Well, my name is Donna. I love walking. We have a nice big yard this time of year, getting out in the yard, weeding, trimming, making bouquets, whatever.
Nice. Beautiful. How about over here?
My name is Elisa, and I like going out to the yard and filling my bird feeders.
Nice. Filling bird feeders.
Yep, and then taking hikes.
And taking hikes. All right. We're just saying our names. First name is good, and what we like to do outside. Favorite thing to do outside, or whatever. You want to go next, Jamie?
Oh, yep. I'm Jamie, and I love going to the beach and hiking
Nice.
with my kids.
Nice. Beach and hiking. And then,
My name is Uli, and I'm just like Jamie, love the beach, and I love the versatility of hikes all over Rhode Island and
Yeah.
how well trails are developed and preserved, and I'm so impressed by that.
yeah, beautiful. So I'm Jeanine, you know this, and my favorite thing to do outside is hiking by far, hiking anywhere, everywhere. Sure. So I loved hiking so much when we moved to Rhode Island about 16 or 17 years ago. I got all the Ken Weber books and I loved them and took all the hikes in them. And then, after a few years, some of the hikes had changed and I kept looking for books that had hikes in them that were updated, and I couldn't find any. And then one day my husband was like, I think you need to write this book. So I wrote the Rhode Island Family Hiking Guide and Journal. Wakefield Books sells it right in town, and you can go to the website rifamiliesinnature.org if you want to find more information. But this is my joy, is like when my kids were little, just getting them outside. I'm not one of those really strong, crazy hikers that does like millions of miles and scales mountains or anything like that. I just like to walk in the woods, but that's where I find my peace and my center. That's why I started Rhode Island Families in Nature. And I also work for RIA, the Rhode Island Environmental Education Association. And we just try to promote and advance environmental education in all of its, whether it's formal educators in classrooms or informal educators in early childhood settings, or even professional development or lifelong learners in any way. So we come together to collaborate and move environmental education forward. So I'm going to guess that I'm not alone in that sometimes when I think about the environment and the climate crisis upon us, that I am like almost, my anxiety can debilitate me. Like it overwhelms me so much because I'm a scientist by training, and so I think I know too much, and it really, really scares me. But I've learned that hiking helps me through that. My other hobbies like puzzles, and I'm going to guess, because we're here at Hera, that knitting or your crafting or your art might be some of the ways that you then you can get through. Yeah, right. Like, so it's like throwing yourself into a creative project.
This for me is so therapeutic. Handwork.
Yeah.
Doing something with your hands, and especially with natural materials. I mean, we're surrounded by sheep, planting local sheep wool. All of that stuff is amazing. Connects our generations to our local
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah, and people find it through like handiwork, craft projects, and then like expressive art, like channeling, whether it's their anxiety or their love of nature through any of their art, or any of your art, and those are the things that help me get through that anxiety. And one of the other things that helped me get through it, and this is kind of more pre-COVID and coming back for me, is that for work I have to drive around the state a lot, and so I listen to a lot of podcasts, and a lot of the podcasts that I listen to are about the environment, and there's one called How to Save a Planet. I highly recommend it. Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson is one of the hosts of it. She's an oceanographer, and she's also kind of a policy wonk, but she's just got this very easy way of speaking about the climate crisis that she like boils it down, and her voice itself is like really calming. So I love her, and I love this podcast. And so in a recent episode, they were talking in the episode about, the name of the episode was, is your carbon footprint BS? Like, does like what you do for the environment as an individual, like, does that really impact the earth? And this is something that I struggle with a lot because, you know, in my home, we recycle everything we can, we compost everything we can, we try to eat very, very little meat, and we do all these individual actions. So that's a cool car, by the way. I wish you could see it. So I don't know, just like, what are some of the individual actions you guys take that you think are good for the environment? Anyone want to throw some out there? Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, well, just recently, in our lawn, we've been planting clover, which should add nitrogen to the soil and the grass. I don't mind the little white flowers. And so we don't have to use any fertilizer, chemicals, or anything like that.
Nice.
And my husband, who loves doing trimming, it was just today, as a matter of fact, doing his own trimming. He bought himself a little chipper so he can make wood chips, and then those wood chips can be spread in gardens or even dry patches on the lawn to sell again.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff, we enjoy doing that, and being self-sufficient and not using chemicals. And
Right.
giving back to the earth.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, certainly the way we take care of our lawns and our properties, if we own them or even if we don't, can have an impact, right? So cool. Elisa, you were going to say something?
We compost, we have chickens, so that's good because then we wind up eating the local eggs from our yard
Right.
rather than buying eggs at a grocery store. What else? I don't know, we bike around town, walk around town, so we're not driving in cars so much, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, transportation's a big thing for sure. And eggs, local eggs, they're delicious anyway. Anyone else? We all recycle, right? Like I'm
Right, yeah, nobody even mentions it
because we do.
Right,
Yeah, good point. We'll come back to that. Nobody mentions it because it's automatic. But remember, well, if you remember, like decades back, right? It wasn't so automatic. I remember having to teach my parents, who are in their 70s, like how, like, no, this is recyclable. Don't put it in the garbage. You know, it wasn't automatic for them, but now they totally do it. Yes.
I watched this movie River Blue. It's about the pollution of waterways by the garment industry, and subsequently didn't buy anything for a year. And then COVID hit, I didn't buy anything for a second year. And that has really made me think about what I need and what I don't need, and about shopping in my own closet and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely garments, the garment industry can,
Makes me very, very
Or
more aware.
consignment and vintage.
yeah.
That's what I do a lot. That's my
Yeah.
go-to.
Yeah, there's so much out there that we can, yeah. So just so you know, the individual actions, I'm looking at my notes so I don't mess this up. We're gonna let that pass. That's a very cool guy, obviously.
But do you want
From out of state.
Is it too distracting for you?
It's not distracting for me, but I figure with recording, I don't want to talk over it. So, but we'll see. If he goes by another time, we'll go. So the individual actions that have the greatest impact are, I don't think in any particular order. The first one's kind of controversial. It's having fewer children. We won't get into the controversy of that, but driving less, because fossil fuel use, obviously. Flying less, period. Having energy efficiencies in your home, so weatherizing your home, solar panels, all of that, anything that you can do, and eating a plant-based diet. So those are the 5 individual things you can do that do have the greatest impact. But the fact is that unlike the recycling thing, right, those things aren't automatic. It's not like you know, we live in South Kingstown. You got to get from one end of the town to the other or to another part of the state. Like, how are you going to get there? Public transportation doesn't really exist down here very much. And unless it's automatic, people don't necessarily do it. It's harder work to do the things for the environment that we need to do. And I'm going to tell you a stat here, because I am a scientist, not really an artist, but don't get scared by it, because then we're going to come back to why it does matter. The average American's contribution to total global emissions, or the total global problem, is 0.000000003. So that's a decimal point, 9 zeros, and then a 3, which is statistically 0. It means that each individual, even if you did everything perfectly, really wouldn't have that much of an impact at all on the global problem. But don't despair, because the way that our individual, so the idea is that the big systemic changes are what make a difference. So when it's required by the law that everybody recycles, then everybody starts recycling, and that will make a difference. If it's required, when it's required that cars no longer use gasoline and they're all electric, then that's going to make a huge difference.
2035.
So 2035, that's right. So the big systemic changes are what need to happen. However, the way we get to those big systemic changes is when the population pushes for that. So, you as an individual buy an electric car, that itself doesn't have too much of an impact on the environment. But you talking about that car with people and communicating why you bought that car and how that car doesn't use fossil fuels and how you can go 250 miles without charging that car or whatever it is, that's actually, like, research says that makes a change. Because when you share that with your friends, your colleagues, your family, it pushes the needle, and then the cultural change happens so that policymakers make the big systemic changes. So even if you don't want to be in the policy world, you can be pushing the cultural needle towards the big systemic changes. So it's, as an individual, like, what are your options? You can either, like, you can either give up and say, like, okay, my individual actions don't matter, so I'm going to, like, buy a Hummer and only eat at McDonald's and, like, throw it all out the window. I don't think that's an option for any of us. The other side of it is you sleep at the State House and you quit your job and you sleep at the State House, and all you do is advocate for policy work. I don't know. Sure, go do that. We need people to do that. That's not me. I don't know if that's any of you. So that's one end of it. But in the middle is taking great stock in the individual actions that you do and finding a way to communicate them to a larger and larger circle. The fact is, there are really not that many climate deniers, true climate deniers. There are people that totally know climate change is real, and they're just spouting things out on the news or whatever, or even to their family and friends, because I certainly have some of those. But the people who really, truly don't believe climate change is real, or that there are environmental issues, is really a small percentage of our population. People are worried about talking about the issues because they don't know if the person they're talking to is one of those climate deniers. Doesn't mean you have to shame people into anything, but we all want to talk about it because we all want to find solutions. So now back to that podcast, How to Save a Planet. I love this kind of action step that Dr. Johnson gave, which is, it's really kind of simple, and I did 2 examples here. So she's a scientist, so she talked about Venn diagrams. I don't know if you guys remember these from math class. I love Venn diagrams. And what you do is, in each of the 3 circles, in one circle you put, what is it that you're good at? And in another circle you think about what work needs doing right now. What do you see in the environmental, what environmental issue do you see, or what, cultural problem can be solved? And then in the 3rd circle is what brings you joy. And the intersection of those 3 things is how you form that ripple, how you start that ripple effect so that the systemic change can happen. So I did some examples. One's really simple and one's really big. So you're going to do your own. So I just want to give you some examples. For me, like, what am I good at? I'm really task oriented, and I have a lot of nervous energy that can be channeled into, like, little itty bitty, like, repetitive tasks. Stay with me here. Yeah. And then what work needs to be done? Well, people need to vote, right? More people in this town, state, country want to move policy towards big systemic change for the environment. I mean, that's what all the polls say, right? Even the not trustworthy ones. So I think, like, when I think, gosh, people need to vote. You know, people just need to vote. And that what brings me joy is at the end of a long day, I'm not one of those people that can sit and watch TV. I have to do something with that nervous energy. And so moving brings me joy. Moving is my meditation. So in the center of those three things is that I volunteer to write a lot of postcards. I write postcards to voters, like likely progressive voters, likely environmental voters. And I throw a lot of my energy into that because it brings those three things together. It's really simple, right? Anyone can write postcards. If you don't want to write postcards, don't do it. Don't, like, that's not your thing. All right, and another one, a bigger one is, you know, what am I good at? I'm really good at connecting people to each other that I think could collaborate or learn from each other. I'm not always the one with the ideas to push that collaboration, but in my role at work, that's what I do. RIA is a network. So I connect, like, you're doing this work in, you know, your Roots to Empower is this awesome organization that works with formerly incarcerated men to teach them farming and food system work and give them a path so that they're path forward with a career so that they don't end up back in jail, right? And then I'll meet someone else that's like, I have like all this extra compost, and I'm like, I'm making this up, by the way, this didn't just happen, but like, okay, the two of you should connect. All right. What needs to be done? Well, people need to understand climate change. We can debate about how to move forward, but people need to understand simply the process of climate change and what's happening. And then what brings me joy is I really love helping people, helping teachers, helping educators, and educating people myself. So in the center of that is my job. It's RIA. I bring all those three things together, and about 5 years ago, if you remember what happened about 5 years ago, 2016, I decided that I was just going to throw myself into my work as much as possible and make the change there. And then families in nature too. So, you know, just trying to get this into the hands of as many people as possible. You know, and if cost is an issue, finding ways to get it into everyone's hands. You know, so so that's big picture, right? My career is one, and writing postcards is on the other end of the spectrum. So I thought we could do this together, and if you wanted to share what you did, or you want to talk about it as you're doing it, we can do that. So I brought clipboards. Here, I'm going to have you pass those out. I brought crayons because everything's better with crayons. You're going to pass that back to Uli for me.
And I can do it actually on the book.
I have, yeah, sure. And I have clipboards if you would rather not.
Good.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
And
Hold on, we're getting crayons though.
we're getting pencils and crayons. Well, because if you're like worried about doing, well, you're not, because you're all like artists. But to me, I'm like, I got to sketch that out first.
We have to sketch it.
I know. No, there's no wrong answer here.
They smell like crayons.
I just I love crayons. Make me feel like a child, like a little child. Like I'm gonna, I don't know. Makes me feel good.
We just got like a 300 pack, and it's just like,
Nice. Yeah, and pencils.
oh, one
But there is so much. How do you?
Oh, we got extra sheets.
But how do you distill? Yeah.
So I would encourage you all to brainstorm right now in each of the 3 circles, like in the outer rings of the circles. Like, you know, write down a bunch of things that you're good at. Write down a bunch of things that bring you joy. Write down a bunch of things that need the work to be done. And then try to look through all 3 of them, talk to your neighbor, talk to me, and then maybe we can come up with like where you're going to throw some energy so that your individual actions can move towards collective action and systemic change.
Jamie, do you want to maybe pause it for a moment?
All right, thank you all so much for sharing. I just want to wrap it up by saying with this whole Venn diagram idea that, you know, there's so much work to be done, right? So when you're thinking about what work needs to be done, focus in on the thing that gets you really fired up. Like the thing about the environment, the thing about the climate crisis that like keeps you awake at night. You know, that's the work that needs to be done for you. And what you're good at, we're all good at different things. So really harness your skills and your style. You know, if you're a grab the megaphone at the rally kind of person, then grab the megaphone at the rally. But if you're like a behind the scenes, making it happen quietly, do that. Like, be where you're comfortable, unless you want to challenge yourself, of course. But use your skills to your advantage. And then, really, if you do what brings you joy in this work, then it's not going to feel like work. You know, we've all done those volunteer, you know, jobs where like you just like dread doing it and it doesn't bring you joy anymore and you got to get out. You know, don't do that. Do what brings you joy, and that doing it is like you want to go do it on a Saturday afternoon or a Monday morning, you know, after you drop your kids at work or whatever, at school, whatever it is. Because if you do what brings you joy in this work, then it's not going to feel as just anxiety provoking. You're not going to be filled with anxiety. You're going to feel like you're moving the envelope forward. So, or pushing the envelope and moving the work forward. So just remember that. And I hope that you go forth and create good change, because I know you all will. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Jeanine. And I just, whoop, other side.
This is fun.
Yes. Thank you so much. This has been the Green Stitch's final conclusion of a speaker, and such a good wrap up for how we can move forward and make changes and make bigger changes. And some of the discussions were great. We'll have the Venn diagram on our website, and all of our programs have been on the website. And this has been the Green Stitch, which is through Hera Gallery, and we were sponsored by the Rhode Island Foundation. And a program came about with the help of Save the Bay and the Rhode Island Natural History Survey. Perfect, and thanks so much. Everybody keep working hard to make the changes that you need and want to see.
Ripple effect.
Yes.